Delhi as his first independent sovereign, Shams-ud-din Iltutmish spread his territory far up to Bengal. To manage affairs of his ever-growing empire, he had placed his eldest and most capable son, Nasiruddin Mahmud, as governor of Bengal. But the tragedy struck. Nasiruddin Mahmud, whom he had groomed as his successor, died in a battle of Lucknow.
On his deathbed, the Sultan saw a bleak future with his other son, Ruknuddin Feroz, considered a natural heir to the throne at the helm of affairs. He decided to do an unthinkable, something which no other emperor or the court of rulers had done in those times.
For several months her face was veiled. Her sword's ray flashed, lightning-like, from behind the screen. Since the sword remained in the sheath, many rebellions were left unchecked. With a royal blow, she tore away the veil. She showed her face sun from behind the screen. The lioness showed so much force that brave men bent low before her.
Iltutmish nominated his daughter, Raziya Sultana, as the ruler of Delhi Sultanate.
She was quite extraordinary in the sense that she had all the qualities of being a strong ruler. She gave up her attire, female attire, donned the right kind of imperial attire, and quite extraordinary. She minted coins in her name which have survived. We know that she was coronated and lived in a palace which was called the Turquoise Palace or Kaushike Subs.
First of all, we do a great disservice to her by saying Raziya Sultan. She herself said that the word Sultan, if added as a suffix, is used for a consort or a princess. I am Sultan Jalaluddin Raziya. That was the name in which she ascended the throne and in the name in which she struck her coins. So we should call her Sultan Raziya. She was a monarch in her own right, not the wife of a monarch or just the daughter of a monarch. Now, her rule is supposed to be very just and a continuation of her father's rule. And Iltutmish, there's a lot that's been written about Iltutmish and his governance. But there's very little written about what Razia actually achieved in the 4 years, except that there was peace and prosperity. Agriculture flourished, people flourished, taxation was very just.
Considered much more able and qualified than any of her brothers, Razia, who according to historical accounts lies buried here in Delhi's walled city at Turkman Gate.
Razia was trained from childhood by her father in warfare, in administration, in statesmanship, and even before he had made his will to appoint her his successor, he had gone on a campaign to Gwalior, and at that time also he left Delhi in charge of Razia and not in charge of his sons. And when he made his will, he said it to the Chehalgani slaves, and he told the Turkish slaves, he said, "My daughter is worth 20 of my sons." So obviously at that point of time, it was ability which mattered to him and not the sex.
While the accounts of that period wrote about her capabilities in valor, Iltutmish's mistress and mother of Ruknuddin Feroz, Shah Turkan, was against her, for she herself harbored the ambition to rule Delhi. As opposition to nomination of Raziya Sultana to the throne, and in effect the prospects of her commanding the Darbar grew, differences within the court became the order of the day. The powerful group of Turkic noblemen, Turkani-Chehalgani, or the noble of 40, saw rule by proxy under Ruknuddin Feroz, for whom courtly affairs held no or very less significance. Chehalgan, one of the most important institutions that developed under the slave dynasty, were a group of highly placed and powerful officers whom Iltutmish had organized as his personal supporters. They were like the cabinet of Sultan.
Well, in the beginning there were two major ruling factions in Delhi, the Turks and the Tajiks. The rulers were all Turks, and they also had officers of the state who were Turks. But there were also people who were not Turks, the Persian-speaking people of Central Asia, who were Tajiks. They were also given leading positions. They were not given high military positions, but they were given civilian ranks, and they were part of the civilian bureaucracy of the Delhi Sultanate. So there were two major factions. But with the passage of time, particularly after the death of Iltutmish, the Turkish faction began to assert itself at the expense of the Tajik faction. And there was a large-scale massacre of the Tajiks carried out by the Turks. Iltutmish's Wazir Nizamul Mulk Junaidi, who was a Tajik, suffered heavily, and so did other Tajiks. So the Turks emerged then, therefore, in the absence of any other powerful bloc, emerged as the sole clique, ruling clique.
It was a time of recurrent discord between the tipped successors of Iltutmish, and the nobles started looking for personal gains, shrewdly pitting one nominee against the other. And so it happened. After the death of Shams-ud-din Iltutmish in April 1236, nobles made his son Ruknuddin Firoz Shah Sultan of Delhi. Hence began the proxy rule of his mother Shah Turkan, and in effect the rise of selected nobles.
Interestingly, both the mothers, Raziya's mother and Ruknuddin's mother, one was Shah Turkan and one was Shah Turkan. And there was a lot of rivalry between the mothers themselves, and because Raziya and her mother were the favoured ones by Iltutmish. So when Iltutmish died, Balban made sure, Ulugh Khan at that time and the slaves, they made sure that Ruknuddin came to the throne. Ruknuddin was what is called in common language Ayyash. He had no interest in ruling or governance, he just wanted power, and it was his mother who was the de facto ruler.
Backed by her loyalists and the band of army, she appeared before public at Quwwatul Islam Mosque. She drew an instant support, who were already seething with anger against the incumbent and the gang of proxy rulers, especially due to continuous hike in taxes. Shah Turkan had asked the nobles to keep on hiking taxes to fill their coffers, majority of what went to meet the expenses on Ruknuddin and his vices.
During one of the Friday prayers, Raziya went into the ladies section of Quwwatul Islam Mosque in the Qutub complex, and from there she came out dressed in the clothes of her complainant in red clothes, and then she appealed to the people of Delhi that your ruler, your Sultan appointed me as his successor, and these Chehelganis have put my brother on the throne. He is not ruling you, he is cruel, etc., whatever the problems, and everybody had a grievance with Ruknuddin. So they agreed to what she said. Ruknuddin at that time had gone to Kilokhdi on a campaign. Kilokhdi is Maharani Bagh. At that time it seemed so far away. And when he came back, he was captured. He and his mother were both imprisoned and later executed. And Raziya is, as Professor Khalik Ahmad Nizami says, that this is such a beautiful example of a monarch who is democratically elected. And she also promised that in case you find any shortcomings in me as a ruler, you can depose me anytime you want. That was her promise to the people of Delhi.
And Raziya assumed the charge of Sultan of Delhi, the first until date the only Muslim woman to rule in Delhi. Firmly in saddle, she proved herself to be a sharp politician as well. Under her aegis, the kingdom successfully crushed the rebellion that occurred in Multan, Lahore and Hasi. Al-Minhaj bin Siraj accounted that from territory of Lakhnauti to Diwal and Damrila, all Maliks and Amirs manifested their obedience and submission before Raziya. On the administrative side, she established Nasiriya College, which was headed by legendary chronicler Al-Minhaj bin Siraj.
Raziya Sultana's private life has also been a subject to intense historical speculation. While there are passages talking about valor, bravery and administrative to taxation reforms during her reign, there are passages engraved in the annals of history that talks about her association with an African origin court slave, Jamaluddin Yaqut.
According to Arab traveller Ibn Battuta, Yaqut was conferred with honours and titles by Razia, giving rise to resentment against her, for Yaqut's origin were considered inferior by the Turkic nobles.
It was the Turks who were ruling at that time, and so an Abyssinian slave being given such an important position as being made the head of the stables, which is again an essential part of our army, and also he is a mentor to the Sultan, would itself be objectionable, and that is one of the main reasons that was used, that was I think that went against her. The fact that she had the independence and she had the guts and the courage to go against the Chehelgani Turks, who were all powerful in themselves, because that is what they would have seen it. She's appointed somebody who is not a Turk, means she has the independence to go against them. So, not in any romantic way or anything, but the fact that she is rebelling against an established order.
Her association with Yaqut eventually led to differences within the court as provincial governors revolted. Among those who revolted was governor of Bhatinda, Malik Ikhtiaruddin Altunia, who is also described as a childhood friend. Yaqut was killed and Razia was defeated. Dethroned as Sultan of Delhi in April 1240, she was lodged in a royal prison at Qila Mubarak in Bhatinda, where she had a regular visitor in Altunia.
When she went to Bhatinda and she fought with Malik Altunia. He imprisoned her, and later on she sent a proposal, or he sent a proposal, I don't know how it happened, but anyway they decided to join forces together and she got married to him. So the fight, whatever was a political one. The marriage may have been a political alliance.
But very soon, Raziya Sultana was preparing for another battle to take back her throne. While she was in prison, her half-brother Muizuddin Behram Shah had usurped the power. The throne of Delhi was once again shaking. Razia fought hard, but destiny had other plans for Delhi's first female ruler.
Much like a romantic life, there are several accounts that talk about her last days and eventually her death. Al-Minhaj wrote that both Razia and Altunia were robbed and killed by thugs en route to Kathil, while some account claims they were executed by Behram Shah.
Now, many years later, Farishta, when he was writing, I think in 1620s sometime, when he was writing, he said that Razia was buried in Kaithal. Now, why Kaithal, I have no idea, because in 13th century, when 14th century, when Firoz Shah Tughlaq is building Firozabad, that is in 1356, Shams Siraj Afif very categorically writes in Tariq-e Firoz Shahi that the king has decided to build a new city on the banks of the Yamuna, and this was the first city that was actually built on the bank of the Yamuna in all the cities of Delhi. And he has bought 18 villages, and he names all those 18 villages, out of which one village he says is Bulbuli Khana, where Sultan Raziya is buried.
Whereas, as per more authoritative accounts, she lies buried at Old Delhi's Turkaman Gate locality. Said to have died a pauper, an erstwhile sultan, driven to hunger and fatigue, faded away in solitude during her sleep. She is believed to have died on October 13th, year 1240.
Now, Ibn Battuta gives a very interesting description. He says that when she came here to fight. With her husband she had come. They had come from Bhatinda to fight here, and the husband was killed. And she was left for dead, I think, when she was fighting against her brother Behram. And somewhere in this area, she asked a man for some food. And he, seeing that she was dressed in the clothes of a warrior and very good expensive clothes, she looked like a man. He killed her and stripped her of her clothes, and then realized that she's a girl. and when the people were called, they recognized her as Raziya. So when she was found dead somewhere here, because she was a disciple of Shah Turkman, he did all the funeral rites for her, got it done, and he buried her here.
The death of Razia was followed by a 6-year period of political uncertainty. After 2 years of Behram Shah's rule, the nobles made Iltutmish's grandson, Alauddin Masood, the Sultan of Delhi. And after 4 years of rule in 1246, his half-uncle Nasiruddin Mahmud took over the throne of Delhi. During this period, the Turkish nobles and army general Balban became very powerful. 20 years later, in 1266, after death of Nasiruddin, Balban became the Sultan of Delhi Sultanate.
The descendants of Iltutmish, including Razia and including Nasiruddin Mahmud, who was the last of the rulers of Iltutmish's progeny, they were all more or less controlled by these nobles. Balban emerged as a major figure in this so-called clique of 40 Turks. So much so that Barni says that Nasiruddin Mahmud was a puppet, namuna in his hands, and it was Balban who was a noble with the title of Khan, Ulugh Khan, who was the real ruler. So the de facto ruler was Balban, whereas the de jure ruler was Nasiruddin Mahmud.
These ruins at Mehroli are the only remnant of his rule. A Turkic warrior of Albana tribe, he gradually rose in ranks from mere Bishti, a water carrier, to a capable minister in Sultan Nasiruddin's reign. Ruling with an iron fist, he weakened the powerful oligarch Chehelgani. There were accounts that when he assumed charge as Sultan, Balban murdered some of them while others were banished from his kingdom.
Balban followed a very deliberate policy of consolidating what he already had, then expanding the domain of his kingdom. That he systematically pursued. Throughout the 22 years of his reign, he was busy consolidating power in the vicinity of Delhi, launching campaigns against rebellious local rulers, also trying to build some kind of an alliance with the local rulers based mostly on a policy of force and violence. But he was not terribly interested in expanding the domain of his Sultanate, and in fact, in a conversation recorded in a historical text, somebody suggested why was he not conquering territories which were worth conquering and annexing. Then he laid out this policy that he would rather stay put and built a stable kingdom in the territory which he was already holding than stretch beyond those. So he was not a great expansionist in that sense.
Establishing an effective espionage system and network of cunning spies, the Sultan of Delhi made sure that everyone was loyal to the crown. Balban modeled his court on the lines of the court of Persia, where every visitor had to prostrate themselves before Sultan. The practice of formal sajda began here.
In the words of Muhammad Qasim Ferishta,
in the retinue of those princes were the most famous men from learning, war, arts and sciences that Asia at that time produced. The court of India in the days of Balban is reckoned the most polite and magnificent in the world. All the philosophers, poets and divines formed a society every night at the house of the prince. The noble Khusro used to preside at those meetings.
Among the folklores, his new residency, now in ruins, located at Mehroli Archaeological Park, once was a city of splendor, with markets of gold on both sides of the pathway leading to what is now his tomb.
Well, the major buildings in the Qutub Mehroli city were built by Iltutmish. And after Iltutmish, there was another round of construction, but that was certainly not during Balban's time. The city of Delhi, if you want to point to a city center, and if you take the citadel, the imperial palace in the citadel as the heart of the political part of Delhi, then that was the Red Palace, which Balban had built in Delhi, Kaushik-e-Lal, as his residence when he was a noble. But after he became Sultan, he started residing in the Red Palace, and then the Red Palace became the Imperial Palace. When Jalaluddin Khilji took power in his hands, he went to the Red Palace, dismounted in front of the palace, as he used to do as the officer of the Turks. And somebody actually asked him why you were doing that. You are now the Sultan and it's your residence. You don't have to dismount as previously. And he said that, look, I have been doing it for so long, I just don't feel like entering the palace and sitting on the throne of my master. So from this episode, we know that there was this Red Palace which was built earlier as the residence of a leading noble and later as imperial palace.
His over 2-decade rule saw him constantly increasing the prestige and power of the monarchy, for he felt that it was the only way to face the internal and external dangers challenging him. But after the death of Balban in the year 1287, a struggle for the throne started, which eventually pulled the curtains on slave dynasty rule in Delhi. As both his sons were killed in the battle, Balban chose his grandson Kay Khusro as heir apparent, but the history chose some other course.
The nobles once again gained a stronghold after Balban's death, and in a first defiance they placed Sultan's other grandson Kekubad as Sultan of Delhi. Kekubad eventually died 3 years later, passing baton to his 3-year-old toddler Shams-ud-din Iltutmish.